Instagram IGTV. Now, we are at the end of the Snowflake Collector, which is the third volume. It's with the third part of Eden by FREI, and that makes it also the third volume of the Eden Miniature series, which is lined up behind me. But as you may know, if you've been following this a little bit, I'm reading from the illustrated edition of the Snowflake Collector. This is the only volume in the series that has an illustrated edition with illustrations by Diego Cassian. And I promised I would show you these illustrations as they appear in the book. And there is one between chapter 11 and chapter 12. And here it is. Chapter 12 is called, this is the last chapter in the Snowflake Collector. Chapter 12 is called by a blanket of white, and no birds were up here this time of year to pluck at the eyeballs, no vermin or hungry beast to tear at his flesh. He was already at rest. When Janor wiped the snow off his face, he saw that he'd closed his eyes and fallen asleep. There was no stare, there was no anguish in his features. There was nothing now but the snow. He had long since grown at one with the universe, the Snowflake Collector, and nothing else mattered now. He had his meaning. He had his hut and his priceless collection of snowflakes, which grew every day that the sky brought him snowflakes. He had a friend in Janor who came to see him every so often when he was in the country, and a friendly face in Janor's mother, Yolanda, whom he saw at the inn on the few and fewer occasions he went down there for an ale. And he had the occasional visitor who had seen Janor's pictures of his snowflakes online, or read about his collection in an article, or heard about it from a local or an acquaintance, or learnt of it from a book. Very rarely, hardly ever, had he accepted an invitation to go down from the valley and journey by bus and train, and sometimes by plane, to one of the cities to address a conference or a symposium, convention, and talk about his understanding of snowflakes. He knew that he could not communicate his understanding of snowflakes to the world by talking about them, and he couldn't by writing about them, which he never attempted, and he couldn't by showing them to Janor, who photographed them and posted his pictures of them online. But he felt he could perhaps give something back to a universe that had, in the end and on balance, treated him fairly and with such care by humouring these people who now that he no longer craved their attention, clamoured for him and professed that they longed to know of his mind. He knew, the Snowflake Collector, that snowflakes had many dimensions, 7 at least he could think of, but probably more, and he could see these dimensions clearly and distinctly in his mind's eye, even though he knew he would never be able to see them with his physical eye, or represent them visually, nor show them to Janos or anyone else. He would not be able to explain them, nor would he ever be able to convince anyone in the world that these snowflakes had many dimensions, 7 at least, but probably more, because he knew enough of the world and its violent rejection of anything it couldn't see with its eyes, and measure with its instruments, and comprehend in the context of its current science, to realize that any attempt of his to do so would remain futile. He knew of the world's irrational fear of anyone and anything it deemed irrational, and he felt not foolish enough any more to argue or make a case. What he could do, and did do, was to collect these snowflakes in their physical 3 dimensions as one who knows of their further dimensions, and as one who knows that what he was able to show Janos, and what Janos was able to show the world, was not just less than half of what a snowflake was, but only the tiniest fraction, because he also knew, the Snowflake Collector, that each additional dimension does not add to a thing as much as the previous one, but each additional dimension increases the complexity of the thing exponentially. He would never, he knew, be able to explain this or convince anyone that this was so, but the thought of it alone made the Snowflake Collector extraordinarily happy, and elated by this happiness he felt for the rest of his days on this earth, in his valley, in love. He was in love with George, the first snowflake he had successfully collected by his own particular method, and he was in love with Janos, whose loyal friendship sustained him, and he was in love with the valley and the mountains that made the valley, and with the stream that ran through it, and with the trees that he planted on the plot of land that he kept by the stream, 2 young trees for each old tree he cut down, and with the old trees he cut down just as much. And he was in love with Yolanda, who served him his dependable ale when he went to the inn on few and fewer occasions, and he was in love with the universe, and he sensed, because of this, the universe in equal measure love him. And he knew then, the Snowflake Collector, that he would be able to communicate to the world his understanding of snowflakes and their dimensions, not through words, not through the snowflakes he collected in the glass cubes that he cut, 1 inch by 1 inch by 1, not through the pictures that Janos took of these snowflakes in their glass cubes floating in the mysterious but not magical gel that he had developed, not through drawing, describing, or dancing them, but through love. And if only one other person, be it Janos, or be it Yolanda, or be it a random visitor to his hut, or be it someone who came across him, or his snowflakes, or his story, were to experience that love And through that love, these dimensions, and through these dimensions were to know of the soul of the snowflake, then his work, he was certain, was worthwhile, and his communion complete. He was now, he felt, as he took all the glass cubes from the cases he had carefully crafted, which, over the years, had needed their own formidable shed, and broke each one open and allowed the gel to evaporate, and the snowflake he had collected in it to escape back into the universe and become what it needed to become next. And having spent many hours so freeing his snowflakes, lying down on his back in the snow, welcoming down upon him new snowflakes that he no longer now would collect, but simply become a part of. He was now, he knew, as he lay there, after another hour or so, closing his eyes and holding his hands open to the sky and allowing the blood to drain from his brain and the pulse to ebb from his temples. He was, now that he had been and no longer needed to be the snowflake collector, he was now at one with it all. And that is it. That's the Snowflake Collector, Volume 3 in the Eden Miniature series. This one is the illustrated edition. Next, we will continue with the Ice King. So the hibernal theme, if you like, continues in a certain way, although it's a very different kind of story, the Ice King. But more of that when we get to it, which is next time, which in real time is on Monday. I do this regularly and so far very consistently, quite consistently, on Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. London time, which is 6 p.m. GMT, which is also Universal Standard Time, I think, and it's 1 p.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time, if you are in the United States, and you can work out what time it is for you. If you want to know about Eden by FREI, there is a website at edenbyfrei.net. There's, of course, a website, my own, at sebastianmichael.com, where you find links, where you find explanations, where you find sources, where you can get this book if you want it. If you were to wish to make a present, a seasonal gift to someone, it is, of course, available. You can also go to bookshop.org and simply search for Snowflake Collector by Sebastian Michael, which is how you find the illustrated edition. And if you search for the Snowflake Collector Eden Miniatures, you should find the little one, the Eden Miniature version as well, which is credited to FREI because it's Eden by FREI. And that's it. Thank you very much for being with me. I have a funny feeling that the live stream has been suffering some quality issues, again, some streaming issues. If that's the case, the recorded clip, which doesn't suffer from these issues, will be uploaded to Instagram and from there pinged back to the Eden by FREI Facebook page. So you will find this also in a better quality if the live stream was once again not so terribly good. I only ever find out about this really in retrospect, but it looked a little bit like I got stuck briefly today. It's technology and it's not perfect, but hey, that's what it is. It's live. Thank you very much for being here with me. See you again next time. Until then, have a wonderful week and an even better weekend. Take good care, love and let love, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.